Okay, then we'll move on. We'll make it all the way up to 93, where there was snow again, quite a significant snow in 93. I seem to remember even Kurt being worried about things. Look at those sedums standing out so nice though. 94, and you might be able to see in the upper right picture a big chunk of purple. That's the butterfly bush area, with all the crocuses coming up, and then white crocuses coming up in the rocks.
It's yellow.
Trying to use them in good places. That's the year that the dummy down the street ran into our rocks and I had to redo the whole rock wall. In 97, no, we missed some years just because maybe it was so terrible outside we didn't go outside. I don't know, but
And we were out of town in one year. We were in England and then in Tucson.
oh, that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, 97 was the next year that we found pictures, and that was a nice year at this point. It looked very pretty. I remember sending you out on this one. Get out there quick.
Get out there.
Because the ice wasn't going to be there for very long. It wasn't thick enough to stay for very long. 98, we went to
Toledo and Longwood.
Longwood.
In Toledo, it was snowing.
Yeah.
And then we got to Longwood later in the day.
And their tulips were coming up. You can see the pattern of their spring bulbs in the long border there coming up. But yeah, they're all cleaned up in Longwood. Boy, they didn't even have the hedges in the idea garden.
98 is totally changed.
Yeah. And in 2000, we're back to snow again, and the ducks were swimming around in the pond and paddling around in the snow, padding around in the snow. The hellebores bent over. It might have been one of the first years that we had hellebores in our own garden, and we were worried about them, no problem. What we realized in looking at this is that driving around now, after the pandemic, construction is geared back up again. I mean, there's just everywhere we look.
Yeah.
If there's not a cleared area where they've ripped out trees and shrubs and they're getting ready to grade, then there are real estate signs there that weren't there before. Why we need another,
lose a lot of wood.
Why we need another strip mall when strip malls are sitting vacant. But at any rate, that's wildlife habitat and it's gone. So we're pushing people even more, delay the cut down, or allow some mess somewhere in the yard, even if it's just one corner someplace. Those stems that were last year's lupin stems, they can stay there. They're just on the ground. I know that this time of year, it makes you feel good. It makes me feel good too, to clip them out, and then you have a greater proportion of green to brown, and it just feels better. It looks better. But those stems have on them eggs and spores that are good stuff as well as bad stuff.
Yep.
And the plant is going to, in a few weeks, that I'm here to tell you, because there have been a lot of times when we weren't able, let alone willing to cut down our garden until June. The plants grow over them.
Yep.
The new foliage hides that stuff. Same thing with the columbine. It's growing up through itself and is just going to be fine. Are there bad things in columbine? Sure. But around the soil, in the soil around them, there's the problem that's going to be that leaf miner that makes squiggles in the leaves. You're not going to take that out. But if I leave those branches there so that they become nice things that the robins and other birds like to come, I love watching the robin hug loose one of these old branches to fly away and put it in a nest and mud it in. If you get the birds hanging around there, they're going to put their beaks in the ground and get those insects out of there too. So they're tiny little larvae, but they're going to find them. And same goes with pruning. There are some things that when I look up, I go, okay, smoke bush. This is my sister's house. I said, you know, that one branch that's hanging out from the smoke bush, like it's going to land on your garden. Maybe we should take that out. But I looked up and went, maybe not. Do you see it?
Where's this?
It looks like a goldfinch nest. They do make them in crotches like that. So do other kind of birds. Yeah, but
hummingbird much smaller than
I need to look up whether they reuse the nest. But even if they don't reuse the nest, look at all the other crotches that are just like that, a cluster of branches together. And some of these things you might say, you know, I could wait until August. We've told you in various webinars that late August is a good time to prune, as well as early spring. So you might want to put things back to after nesting time. I'm going to jump through to 2005. We had a lot of things going on early in the 2000s, and I can see why there were no pictures. First time that we noticed witch hazel blooming that late in the year. And I think that was one of the Primavera witch hazels. That was 2006 was the year that I realized that the garter snake's tongue was the same color as the stamens inside the crocuses. And it was one of the years when the hellebores bloomed late. And I realized how much trouble it is to clip out the stems when the flower buds are already up, and that it may be better to take those off earlier. We've learned to take the hellebore leaves off that are discolored, because they do get a problem like peonies get, a botrytis, a fungus infection that can then spread to the flowers and blight the flower petals. So you can see brown on the flower petals. So we do clean up hellebores, and usually if we clean them up early in the year, then we'll throw a evergreen branch over the buds if they're up, just to cover them as if the leaves were still there. 2007, we're still clear. Daffodils getting ready to bloom. Crocus is the Dutch crocus in bloom.
A spring witch hazel.
A spring witch hazel, yeah, one of the, like Jelena, it looks like, with that orangey bloom. But back to 2008, and snow again.
And
Dog tracks in the backyard. And look, Steve, there's a little bit of ice you can go out there and break.
yeah,
Steve just
Right
loved to
there.
go out there and break the ice in the pond and keep it open. And birds would take baths, especially those starlings. It's 30 degrees out there and they're bathing. 2010, the Cornelian cherry and the willows. I don't remember whose house that is.
Deb Green's.
Oh, okay. Hi, Deb.
I'm pretty sure it is.
But the hellebore is showing color already.
Yeah.
Where you look and you say, you know, I need to move those around a little bit so that I can appreciate them more. 2011, we were out on the state pruning at Corey's house. I took half that crabapple out, basically, and explaining why we took it out. Crocuses blooming, snowdrops still blooming. What happened during the pandemic was unique, was singular. People just piled into garden centers. Garden centers had their best years ever in history, as people came in and new people came in and bought stuff. And what they did is they bought plants that they didn't know what they were or what they were going to do. And the garden centers started ordering more stuff because people were coming in and let's give them more stuff to do. Those plants are maturing and people have to learn what they are. So this year, we're going to spend a lot of time looking and going, oh, what is that? Look at that beautiful blue-green. I thought for a minute, and when I walked by and saw the color, I thought that we had the corydalis, it's called blue panda. It has blue flowers on it. That one doesn't reliably make it through the winter for me, but boy, I'd love to have it. And then I realized, no, looking at it closer, that's wood poppy. That's Stylophorum.
Yeah.
And they're pretty, aren't they pretty? Wouldn't a bunch of those around a peach colored coral bell look really cool?
Yeah.
And then while I was looking at them, so the Stylophorum, the wood poppies in the foreground, I said, what is that? What is that coming up? Is that a Virginia bluebell? I've never noticed them in the club.
I
Now,
don't know
we're-
what that is.
We are relatively new to this property, and there was a gardener here before. I may have not ever
I
noticed this
didn't even
before.
see that plant.
It
out
might
there.
be an Anchusa, a little John. I don't, maybe.
I don't even remember seeing it. This,
I
you
remember-
took those pictures.
Yeah, I don't-
I didn't.
But it's out there now. Did it come from seed and it's been around, and was it there and mixed in with
Oh,
other stuff?
sorry.
Yeah, so what do we do with that? Because that's what we're used to, Virginia bluebells coming up looking quite red as they come up because
Red
they're
and
so
deep
full of
purple.
antifreeze. So I said, I don't think it's a Virginia bluebell, but it looks like it's related. And then there's the corydalis, the golden bleeding heart. I mean, just look, isn't it beautiful? So spend some time making sure that you know what things are. Maybe help other people figure out what they are because they planted it and they don't know what they. Quite often I pull things up when it's new for me. I pull it up, and when I pull it up and look at the potting soil on the roots, I go, "Uh-oh, I don't think this was a weed." Or when I pulled this one up, I went, "Oh, for crying out loud! I forgot that was even there." That's a threadleaf coreopsis, which the threadleaf coreopsis is a cross between Coreopsis verticillata and most of them now, and Coreopsis rosea, or one of the other Coreopsis, and some of them are runners. I mean, some of them really spread out to the side. I used to laugh at the pink Coreopsis rosea that it never wanted to be in the same place twice. So, and you can plant it back in the ground, just
Yeah.
plant it right back in. I looked at these now, even if I hadn't known by the leaves that it was probably a marsh marigold, once I pulled it up and looked at the roots, I went, I know what you are.
Yeah.
I mean, my first marsh marigolds I planted as little tubers like that. These guys grew up in January when it was warm and then eventually got killed back sometime in late February.
And
They're
they'll come
back, oh, they're up now all over
Yeah.
the place, and I found out that why they're spreading around in a dry garden.
I don't know.
Silly plants. Do you know bloodroot when it comes up? I mean, look how blue and purple that is. It's just loaded with antifreeze. These are chemicals that the plants make specifically to make the cells more salty, and a salty cell is much less likely to freeze. I love how bloodroot comes up all wrapped around the flower bud like that.
Yeah.
And to the Venus dogwood, Mark's question earlier about Venus dogwood. Venus dogwood is a hybrid between our native flowering dogwood and the Clusa dogwood. They're pretty spectacular in bloom.
Much
This
bigger flowers.
is one I think called Summer Fun. I've forgotten for sure its name, but we picked it up for our son last year and put it in last year. So it's a new tree, and I was over there looking to see how it looks. It's got lots of buds on it. I said, Steve, can you take one of the buds and take a look at how it did? So I'm slicing through the buds. You can see how the bud caps loaded with resins and anthocyanins are curved around and have kept that intact inside. There might be some damage there on the left where it's brown. There might have been some damage when it was forming, or there might have been a bit of leaf and flower blight, which dogwoods can get, that there was a spot of fungus on there, and when that flower opens, it won't be a perfect white flower. It'll have
A little
the
brown
spot
spot
on it.
maybe or something.
But it looks like they made it through the winter really well. And this was a new plant without very much root yet, especially after I got done cutting up the roots.
Mhm.
And so if you've got one that's been in longer, it's really well established, it's going to be just fine.